Well, hello, we're the Cattanachs. I'm Rachel.
I'm Ian.
And we have been married for going on 12 years. We've had a long journey in those 12 years,
Yes,
but God has
have.
been good through it all.
Well, November of 2022 is kind of where everything kind of went downhill for us. I had actually been out of work already for about a month with migraines and neck pain. I remember the day, November 12th, 2022. I went to a chiropractor to get an adjustment. After the adjustment, I went to stand up off the table and I almost fell to the ground. I couldn't move the right side of my body. I couldn't swallow. I could barely talk. I ended up sitting slumped over in a chair while the chiropractor called 911. And the ambulance came and took me to the emergency room, and 3 hours, and I was in Chicago at Rush Medical Center. And I was diagnosed with a stroke at the age of 34. And everything kind of just changed drastically at that moment.
So I arrived at the hospital. They told me in the ER, just sit down. We'll let you know when you can come back and see him. And they told me he had a stroke. And it was just one of those out of nowhere, like, you don't expect that kind of a thing to happen. Kind of felt like a movie, like nothing was real.
I was so focused on all of the limitations that were put on me because of the stroke that I wasn't really able to see God's movement in that part of my life. If I were to be totally honest, for a good long time after the stroke, I was very angry. I was angry at God because we had a lot of good things going for us before the stroke, and I love music, and I was serving regularly. I couldn't serve, I couldn't sing, I could barely talk. I think the anger kind of clouded a lot of stuff for me. And I remember December 5th of 22 was my discharge day, and I went home in a wheelchair, but being able to be wheeled out of the hospital and put into a car and on my way home, probably the best feeling that I had had in a very long time. Well, a few months down the road, we're months behind on rent and barely being able to pay our bills, and we kind of had to have that hard, that hard conversation of like, okay, it's either we try to stay here, try to make it work, and just be miserable for who knows how long, or we make the hard choice, we move everything and start over, basically again. Who knew we would have ended up here, to be honest? Like,
right.
If you would have told me then, hey, by the way, you're eventually going to be in Wisconsin, you're going to be at this amazing church, your healing process is going to begin once you walk through that door the first time, I would have said you're crazy. I would have been like, you're off your rocker at that point. Like, there's no way. When we first started attending, I would sit through worship, and worship is if you know me, worship is the way that I connect with God. And for me to sit through a worship set, I had a lot of anger. A lot of anger and resentment and grief for the things that I thought I had lost. But being here and just knowing how God is moving through this church and through the people of this church, it wore away at that. And it wore it away, and it let me get to a point of where I could just let it go and realize that I had been holding on to it for so long, and being free to enjoy what God is doing here and what God is trying to do through us and through this church and through the people of this church. And just, I have been a Christian over half my life, and I have never been in a place with my relationship with God than I have been here now. The recovery, God being in part of my recovery and being allowing me to be able to play my guitar again and be able to serve on the worship team and do something that I know that are God-given gifts that I have, that now being able to use them again after so long. I honestly never thought I'd be able to serve again.
I would agree. Yeah, it was the best thing to happen from probably one of the worst situations. You wouldn't expect a stroke and all that we went through to be used in such a way where God can say, here you are home. We truly feel like where we are now in Wisconsin, here at Refuge, SPCA Canaland, like this is home. We couldn't imagine life any other way. We're both here on staff working at Refuge. Ian has gone from not being able to use half of his body, not being able to walk and swallow, to being able to work part-time in facilities. Now I'm the assistant director at Cattanach. Just seeing growth is so reassuring, so encouraging.
I mean, we're doing the 21 days of prayer and fasting, and honestly, I think even just over the last 10 days, I have been even more connected than I think I've ever have. That would have never happened if we weren't here.
Yeah, having a sense of purpose, I think, is the biggest thing, and knowing that that comes from God. God has this purpose for us, whether we know what the next step is or not. We trust Him, and that's just so life-giving. I can't imagine wanting to do anything else without God.